ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to 5 Minutes of Math. This is Mr. Lunsford, and I am glad you joined me this evening. Tonight's homework is for the evening of February 21st, 2018, and this is the second half of our Introduction to Composite Shapes. Let's go ahead and get started. We are picking up with problem number 6. If we look at this shape, it looks complicated, but it's not. There's a rectangle, there's a triangle. So you see them? A rectangle down here, triangle up here. And now we have to find our measurements. We're going to start by finding the measurement of the height of that triangle that's sitting on top of that rectangle. You'll see why I did that in a few minutes. So we have a situation where that entire dashed line is 16 yards. All right. Now, we also know that this portion of that rectangle is 8 yards. And as it turns out, if this is 8 yards, that means this is also 8 yards. So we're just going to subtract and find what's left. So we find out that 8 is the height of that triangle sitting on top. So now, let's go to spread this out a little bit. We're going to need the measurement of that base. The reason we need the measurement of the base is because we need to know that number in order to find the area of that triangle sitting on top. So the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So what is the measurement of that base? If we look just at that rectangle sitting at the bottom, we have 6, that blue space, and then 6 again. We know that entire line segment is 24 yards. So what's the length of our missing base? So let's take a look at that. 6, then 24, and then 6. And there's a space in the middle, so 6 plus something plus 6 equals 24. So how do we figure that out? Subtract 24 minus 6 will give us our missing base. And as it turns out, 12 is our answer. All right, so I'll take that back. Here we start. We have 24 yards. That's the complete bottom of that rectangle. And at the top, we have 6 on one side of that missing space and 6 again. So there's 24 minus 6 minus the other 6 on the other side. So that missing piece in the middle has to be 12. So 12 is the length of that missing base. All right. So going on, we have now added this label to our diagram, 12 yards. The height of that triangle at the top is 8 yards. The length of that base is 12 yards. Now we're ready to go ahead and use our formulas. So we have our triangle that I've moved over to the side and our remaining rectangle. So now what do? Here's our toolbox for area formulas. And you'll notice that we can use our triangle. We can use that as our area for our triangle, 1/2 base times height. We can also use the area for a rectangle. And that's just A times B, or length times width. So if we go back to our shape, we have A times B, and that's 24 times 8. So we don't need the 6 and the 6 and the 16 yard. We don't need any of that. We just need the length of our rectangle, 24, times the height of that rectangle, 8, to figure out that total area. And that's 192. Now let's go over to our triangle. And we have 1/2 base times height is our total area. The base is 12 yards that we just worked to figure out, and our height is 8 yards. So let's just fill in the blank. So 1/2 times 12 times 8, and that's 1/2 times 96, and we end up with 48. 192 plus 48 is 240 yards squared. All right, and that's pretty much it. 240 yards squared. And that's all we have to do for number 6. All right, here's number 7. So we're looking again at an ice cream cone that's apparently been tipped onto its side. So let's go ahead and see what measurements we have and what we need. We can look at this shape and say, all right, we have 8 centimeters as our radius of that half circle, and we have 15 centimeters as the height of the triangle sitting on the other side of the cone. So we have that half circle and we have a triangle. So those are the two shapes we're going to work with. Now let's find some measurements. I'm going to split that in half, and I think we have everything we need to find the area of this ice cream cone. Now let's look at our toolbox again. We can use the formula for our half circle, pi times r squared divided by 2. And we can also use the area of a triangle, 1/2 base times height. So let's come back here. All right, starting with our half circle, we have pi, which is 3.14, times r squared. Now, radius is 8, and that's where I'm getting that number. And 3.14 times 8 squared, which is 64, which is 200.96 divided by 2. That's 100.48. Now, we come over to our triangle, 1/2 base times height. Our base is going to be 16. And I'm going to tell you why it's 16. 8 times 2 is 16. And that's why we have to use 16 instead of 8. So don't let that throw you. Just because we're using radius on one side and we can just use that 8, on the other side we're using a whole different formula. So remember, we have to use that entire base to find the area of that triangle. So it's 1/2 times 16 times 15. 15 is just our height right here. And 16 times 15 is 240. Half of 240 is 120. Add both of those up, and you end up with 220.48 centimeters squared. And that's basically all you have to do for number 7. Y'all take care, and remember, math is not just about numbers, it's about the relationships that surround us every day. Have a good one.